Why are or aren't you religious? I'm not asking what your religion is, but I'm curious if you can try to dig deep and find out why you've become religious. Were your parents religious? Your school? Your community? Did you become religious later in life? Did you shun your religion for some reason? For the time being, I will keep my religious views to myself, so I won't influence the comments. I was raised as a Southern Baptist. My grandfather is a preacher retired now. I used to believe quite strongly. My faith began to fade in my late teens. One of my problems with religion is that there are so many of them. Practically every culture for all time has had their own separate religion, and each one believed that theirs was the one. What made me think mine was the right one and billions of other people throughout history were wrong and are burning in hell? I just happened to get lucky enough to be born into a family that believed the right religion? That's bullshit. Clearly, religion is just an attempt to explain a frightening and complex world we don't understand. On a personal level, I had a bad experience. I had been an active member of my church's youth group for years. I got my girlfriend pregnant in high school. You'd have thought I murdered someone. Many of the people treated me like crap about it. Not everyone, of course, but enough that it hurt. Where was the undying love and compassion they preached about? I sure could have used it at that time in my life. I've always thought this. I was raised religious. But when I started reading extensively about other cultures and religions, I began to question how I was so sure that my religion was the right one. I was a product of my environment, raised to believe and accept what my parents and culture accepted to be true. I realized that my religion had no more credibility than any other religion. This opened my eyes a lot and made me question many things. I am an atheist now, but I still strive to respect the religion of others. For me, faith is all about what makes you feel most content in the world. It's a scary place that we don't really understand all that well, and if faith in a God makes it easier for you to live your life and face mortality, well, it's not really my place to take that away from you, just like it isn't anyone else's place to try to convince me away from my lack of faith and into their own. Lack of respect and tolerance for the beliefs of others is the real issue, and it occurs in both atheists and theists. I'm not religious because I wasn't raised in a house that ever practiced it. Religion was a non-issue in my family, and I never read the Bible, so the whole idea of religion and God just didn't ever make any logical sense to me. I too was raised like this. Religion was never put down in my house. It was more of a do-as-you-please. God was mentioned in context to life sometimes, but never anything much. I ended up working with religious establishments 2 times so far in my life. Once as maintenance to a Christian church, and not so long ago as a in-class assistant to a teacher in a Christian school. I respect religions, but they are not for me. I have developed ideas I follow based on my time in these environments and do believe that some learning the ways of religions can help you learn about yourself. Following religion can take your freedom away in my mind. Why would a God give me free will only to expect me to devote my life to a religion? Wouldn't this being wish me to formulate ideas and live life to my best without following a herd? Rambling. My parents explained religion to me, and they explained that there were many different faiths and that lots of people argue over what is right, and they just let me believe in what I want. Looking at all the religions objectively and viewing them from that point of view made me just not be religious. Edit, my parents are atheist, but they never revealed that to me. They let me choose on my own, and I thank them for that. Same here. My dad was raised Muslim, but has been atheist since as long as he can remember. My mum was raised Catholic, but grew out of it. Basically, they taught me about all the major religions in the world and told me I was free to believe whatever I want. When you get faced with all of them at a very young age, you realize pretty quick that none of them make sense. Also, growing up with mostly irreligious people, when I started frequenting the internet more often and learned about the religious weirdos that pester the us, I was dumbfounded. It was such a foreign concept to me that anyone would try to push their religion on other people or try legislating stuff like creationism in schools. Took me some time to wrap my head around it. Possibly one of the reasons for this is curriculums in the US schools. I went to public school in America for the first 9 years of my schooling, and the last 3 were abroad under a British program. The most marked difference I found was the aim of the curricula. The US programs don't have an emphasis on the why of knowledge, but rather knowing the what. I remember in my AP English class, for example, I had to do Lord of the Flies, standard high school book. My testing on it consisted on knowing characterization and knowing synopsis and even themes and whatnot. However, the next year, I actually did the same book while under the British program, and I was then forced to know everything that was required under the AS curriculum, as well as being able to understand the context of it and why it is a book worth studying. Point is, the AS curriculum, I felt, never went far enough. It teaches knowledge, yet stops short of application, and deeper understanding it fails to teach proper evaluative skills. It's because of this I've felt the AS education system has played a part in allowing some maniacs to still vehemently deny evolution. If the formative years reinforce this way of learning, being a sponge is made so easy. And you can often find people who are Christian and can tell you Bible stories, but if you ask them why, it's an absurd question that they never really posed themselves. I don't know, maybe just where I live in the US. Source, Texas. I'm always happy to hear about parents presenting religion this way to their kids. It really is the right way. Present them with the facts, let them make up their own mind based on what they believe in. Unfortunately, it's pretty standard practice to just shove your beliefs down a child's throat and not actually let them think for themselves. This was my parents' approach. I give them credit, though. My dad was a very devout Catholic who went to church every week, read the Bible every day, and really, truly believed. Hoped. My mum is religious, but not to the level that he was. They never forced me to go to church. They didn't really talk about it until I was about 12, and they told me the same thing. There are a lot of religions. Each has their good ideologies and their bad ones. I, on the other hand, became religious for a while, then got disillusioned over the following few years. Same situation for me. My parents and grandparents are not religious, so it is a very foreign concept to me. When I was in elementary school, I was the most religious kid you would ever meet. I dragged my parents to church on Sundays. I vowed that when I got older, I would give away all my money to the poor charities. And I was even thinking of becoming a priest. Then, one day during 5th grade, my teacher was dictating to the class, "Only those who let Jesus into their hearts and a Catholic will be accepted into heaven." I rose my hand and asked, "My mum is Protestant. Is she going to heaven?" "No, your mother is going to hell." I can still remember that to this day. It just completely shattered my beliefs, and I went home crying to my parents. They raised hell at my school like no one's business, and the teacher was forced to apologize, but that was such a major blow to everything I believed in, and it really started me on the path of completely walking away from the church. Edit, this did not instantly turn me into a full-blown atheist. It just started me on the path to really begin questioning what my faith was, its strength, and whether or not the established Catholic Church was right for me. As it stands, I'm more agnostic than anything else. Edit 2. Thank you for the gold. This is actually the first time I've gotten it. That is such a horrible thing to say to a child. Someone more knowledgeable can correct me, but I'm pretty sure that isn't even Catholic teaching. You're correct, at least by any sane modern interpretation of Catholicism. There are a lot of inconsistencies in the way these things are taught, unfortunately, depending on location and who is teaching. However, the core beliefs of Catholicism are not exactly open for interpretation. Source, 12 years of religious education as a kid. Edit, wow, this really blew up. I guess that's what I get for talking about Catholicism on Reddit. Please refrain from abuse. Folks, raised Catholic, went to a Catholic primary school, church every Sunday, was baptized, first Holy Communion, etc., then went to a Catholic secondary school, high school, but part of the religious studies class was to look at other faiths. Also was taking classics, the study of ancient civilizations, Egypt, Greek, Rome, and well, I think this old phrase best sums it up. Study one religion and you'll be hooked for life. Study 2 religions, and you're done in an hour. I went to Catholic school for 12 years. If you went to Catholic school, why aren't you a Catholic? Because I went to Catholic school for 12 years, can confirm. Went to Catholic school, had it metaphorically beat out of me. My reaction after that, this, 100. Any intelligent, thoughtful kid is going to question things. Catholic schools often try to shame kids into believing. If you are smart enough to question the dogma, you'll be smart enough to know when you're being manipulated. We had a great Old Testament class where the teacher went through a lot of content and said, yeah, this didn't happen, then explained why it was written the way it was and what most credible scholars believe happened, i.e. the Exodus story. And it was at a Christian school, too. Taught by a devout Christian. Same. My OT class was taught by a Jesuit. Those Jesuits are really good at turning little Catholic kids into little agnostic kids. Indeed, but from my experience, Jesuits aren't that interested in blind followers. Even if I'm an atheist now, they taught me to have a critical mind and to put things in perspective. Yeah, the Jesuits at my high school were more interested in smart theologians than blind Catholics. Basically, knowing why something was in the Bible was more important than blindly saying the Hail Mary. As a Protestant, I had the highest grade in all my theology classes. If I had a teacher who was more responsive to questions and a bit more open-minded, I may be a practicing Catholic today. However, throughout the year I had with her, she so strongly turned me off to the idea that I'm not really sure I'll ever practice again. You can always tell who went to Catholic school because they're all atheists. Mike Birbiglia. I had it non-metaphorically beat out of me in Catholic school. It took me almost 10 years to come to terms with the fact that yes, I actually am a believer, and no, I don't need somebody to stand between me and God and tell me how to interpret my religion. Confirmed here as well. The more I learned, the more WTF it all seemed. Yeah. For me, the reason why I could never believe one religion true and all the others false is because I know that, while I might become a devout Christian having been raised in a Christian society, I'd just as likely have become a devout Muslim if I'd have been raised in a Muslim society. The Muslim me would have been just as insistent that Christianity is wrong as the Christian me would be toward Islam. I also realized that Muslim me might go through life believing he's doing everything right by God in hopes of eternal reward, and that it'd be profoundly wrong for the Christian God to damn him even though he was doing his best given the parameters of his upbringing. These realizations showed me that if there is a God, he is a universal God. Religion is a candle inside a multicolored lantern. Everyone looks through a particular color, but the candle is always there. The Buddhists have a saying that goes something like this: religion is a finger pointing at the moon. We would do well to remember to focus on the moon and not the finger, believing he's doing everything right by God in hopes of eternal reward, and that it'd be profoundly wrong for the Christian God to damn him, even though he was doing his best, given the parameters of his upbringing. This is sort of the main reason I lost my religion. Realizing that so many people would be punished for eternity even though they could be amazing human beings, but just raised in the wrong country, was just an awful thought. It showed me that a God that did that was either petty or evil and not a God I wanted to worship, and most certainly didn't line up with what the church said. I never heard the church call God petty or evil. Also, the idea of a heaven-hell afterlife never made sense to me, because I could never be happy in heaven knowing there were souls being tortured forever in hell. So a heaven of eternal happiness either meant it was false, or it would be a Matrix-type situation where you would be ignorant of the reality outside of heaven, including hell. What a bunch of baloney. At that point, I decided my religion was do not be an asshole, just follow the golden rule which is present in many religions and philosophies and lead a happy life. I think my interest in Greek and Roman mythology was a big part of questioning Christianity to the point of dropping it. Thinking that those people then actually believed those myths back then to the same extent we believe in these religions today hit me like a hammer. We scoff at the idea that Zeus or Mars or Ra existed, yet so sure that Jesus was real. God promised his people the Holy Land. Odin promised the end of ice giants. I don't know about you, but I don't see any ice giants around. I had a very similar upbringing, raised in a Catholic home, Catholic schools, etc., and also had a world religions class that required us to speak with someone from a different faith. A classmate and I ultimately had to go to a mosque and speak with someone there. And other classmates went to different places of worship for Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, etc. And after that class, that was the end of trying to establish any one religion, let alone my own, as true. How can anyone be so convinced that their religion is the way when there are so many ways? It seems that the main point of all religions across all societies is to just live your life to the best of your abilities and to be a decent human being. So needless to say, I do not believe in Catholicism or Christianity or anything as being a faith to truly hold anymore. And I'm happy for it. I think Durkheim put it best: God is society, writ large. See, that's something that I can get on board with, being a decent person. But apparently to some, you are a total piece of crap because of your lack of faith, even if you are a decent person by their standards. WTF. Exactly. That's what's so tough about trying to live your life as a decent person without ascribing to a set religion. It's amazing how many people think you can't be moral without some form of religion or belief in God. You're immediately judged for not being religious. I was raised in a Hindu family, and whenever I was up to some mischief, my nanny would tell me God is always watching and he would poke your eyes out if you get into trouble. I was 6 and I would think if God created me and made me get in trouble, why would he punish me for that? I don't think I ever seriously believed. Whenever we went to any temples, I would admire the sculptures and all the jewels adorned by the gods and goddesses, but that's it. A friend told me that when she went to a temple and saw the deity, she would feel a small shiver of thrill, of happiness. I am not sure go through her. I remember thinking, damn, why doesn't that ever happen to me? I thought staring at the idol intently would make me shiver. But nope, I felt nothing. My mum is religious and my dad and older brother are not. I think that also had an influence on me. I didn't know that atheism was a thing until I read God's Delusion though, and suddenly I went, oh, I am one. But Hinduism does have some really cool stories. I will give you that. The mythologies are so intricately written and fascinating. Edit, grammar and punctuation. I'm John, if that means anything. I've always thought that Hinduism was less about worshipping gods and more about actual self-realization and nirvana. I think the intention for self-realization and nirvana is there in many of the texts, very clear as daylight. But maybe, unfortunately, at least in my experience, the way Hinduism is practiced is very much worship-based. People pray to the gods or one particular god all the time for something or another. Usually somewhat abstract things like luck and prosperity and happiness, etc. It seems to me at least that many Hindus haven't actually read any of the religious texts. And when they have heard of them, it's been in a song form, usually in Sanskrit, that people don't know. It's very complex, I guess. But I guess that's my 2 cents. I'm from the UK. Most people I know are not religious. They're not even atheist. Religion simply doesn't factor in their lives. They don't go to church, don't pray, don't believe in God. When I was 12 or so years old, God was in the same place as Santa and the Easter Bunny. A story for children. Not harmful. Not true. When I first went to America and met lots of religious people for the first time, it was a very strange experience. Imagine if you went to visit another country where everybody seriously and earnestly believed in the Easter Bunny. That was me visiting the Deep South. TLDR, social upbringing. Nobody is really that religious where I'm from. Edit, I just want to clarify that I don't hate the Deep South. Mobile AL was one of my favorite places in America to visit. And I've traveled and lived all across America, and as a whole, religion strikes me as important to you in a way that it simply isn't for most people in the UK. In the South, the culture clash was most obvious to me, but I noticed it in New York, Baltimore, California too. Edit 2, most people I know are not really atheist in the same way some Americans are. Most UK people wouldn't say I am an atheist. People don't come out as atheist over here. Saying you don't believe in Jesus out loud is like saying I don't believe in Santa and I don't care who knows it as an adult. Just a bit weird. Edit 3. I don't believe this is because people from the UK are intrinsically smarter than the us. I don't see it as an intelligence thing, just a social norm. I was raised by religious parents. In a religious community in a country where religion still has power over certain political agendas and there has been huge scandals exposed in recent years, I see the harm of organized religion and always have been expected to behave a certain way under this religion. Anything else is disrespectful. Through my teenage years, certain things just did not seem to fit together. I do not like the idea of organized religion. I believe that whether there is a God or not should be a personal thing and people should just be respectful of others' views instead of trying to force them to obey what their religion believes. I agree on your idea of a personal religion. People should be free to think what they want, as long as they don't enforce it on others, though a discussion with arguments is always welcome, or influence others in a bad way because their religion demands it. I love discussing religion with people who are generally curious and respectful of what others believe, no matter what their personal beliefs are. I tend to avoid discussing it with people who are negative or just looking for something to poke fun at. Don't remember where I read this. Probably on Reddit. Religion is like a penis. It's fine to have one, and it's fine to be proud of it, but please don't whip it out in public and start waving it around. And please don't try to shove it down my children's throat. I'm not being disrespectful or anything. I just think it sums it up pretty good. I am a Christian. I wasn't raised in it. My parents never went to church. I became interested when I was in elementary school and was baptized. I moved away from the faith later and eventually accepted that I was an atheist. Last year I started to get this itch. I wanted to know more. My wife is religious, and I went to church with her because she wanted to raise the kids in the church, and I frankly didn't care. That had gone on for a couple of years. But last year I picked up the Bible, and I started realizing that everything I had ever known about Christianity was wrong. Christ clearly calls us to love other people. He doesn't talk about getting into heaven. He says the kingdom of God is within us and will come to earth. He filled his life with misfits and taught that we should love our enemies. He told us not to judge each other, but to help each other out. He saves us by his grace, not by our actions. People have done and said a lot of stupid stuff in his name. I read through this thread and I see so many people who have been damaged and destroyed and cast aside by their churches, and I just want to say I'm sorry. We are not all like that. The dirty little secret that many in the church like to forget is that we are all damaged and broken people and that we should try to be better. But being a Christian doesn't automatically make you a good person. It boggles my mind that people take a faith based on humility and self-sacrifice and service and turn it into a way to make money. But they do. I hope that everyone here who has been hurt by a church or a Christian is able to find some sort of peace or catharsis. And I am truly sorry that something that was supposed to be a beacon of light in the darkness has been used to give you pain. Edit. Wow. Thanks for the gold. Guys, I like your view on things, and as an atheist, I can identify with some of it. I would never consider myself Christian, as I won't accept any of the supernatural claims about Jesus or any other Bible character. But I can take inspiration from what Jesus is claimed to have said, and constantly try and better myself, using him as a kind of role model, like many other role models I have. Greetings from India. I personally do not believe in following a religion, and I am not at all religious, even though my family is. What I've noticed is that religion and castes and everything causes problems in the society. May they be problems related to intercaste marriages or untouchability or any such thing. So, I choose to treat every person equally, no matter what family or what religion or what status they have. Also, if anyone chooses to believe in religion and follow it, then I have no quarrel with them. I learnt to accept people as they are a long time back. It keeps things simple. Live a good life. If there are gods and they are just, then they will not care how devout you have been, but will welcome you based on the virtues you have lived by. If there are gods but unjust, then you should not want to worship them. If there are no gods, then you will be gone, but will have lived a noble life that will live on in the memories of your loved ones. Edit. Apparently Marcus Aurelius didn't say it best, but it's still what I believe. It's sound wisdom. Thanks for the Reddit gold. That is exactly what I believe. If a god sends me to hell for not worshipping him properly, then he is not a god I would want to worship. My worship is trying to be the best person I can be. Indeed. Why would a god want to reward those who do good deeds? Purely so that they can get a ticket into heaven. Those who don't expect anything in return are surely the ones who are likely to be rewarded. A god who demands worship to avoid punishment just seems power-hungry. I really like that. Thank you very much for sharing. Here's another good one. So live your life that the fear of death can never enter your heart. Trouble no one about their religion. Respect others in their view and demand that they respect yours. Love your life, perfect your life, beautify all things in your life. Seek to make your life long and its purpose in the service of your people. Prepare a noble death song for the day when you go over the great divide. Always give a word or a sign of salute when meeting or passing a friend, even a stranger, when in a lonely place. Show respect to all people and grovel to none. When you arise in the morning, give thanks for the food and for the joy of living. If you see no reason for giving thanks, the fault lies only in yourself. Abuse no one and no thing, for abuse turns the wise ones to fools and robs the spirit of its vision. When it comes your time to die, be not like those whose hearts are filled with the fear of death, so that when their time comes they weep and pray for a little more time to live their lives over again in a different way. Sing your death song and die like a hero going home. Attributed to Chief Tecumseh. That last line is deep. Attributed to Chief Tecumseh. Last line gave me insta chills. That's wonderful. Reminds me of my favorite Cherokee proverb. When you were born, you cried and the world rejoiced. Live your life so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. So is a remix by Big Sean a valid death song? Marcus Aurelius said it best. Good to know. But the fact that it came from less than an emperor's mind doesn't diminish the quote itself. It's still an excellent way to approach life. Attributing a quote to a great mind makes people contemplate it more, even though what really matters is what is said, not who said it. Thanks. Here's the actual quote possibly. Since it is possible that thou mayest depart from life this very moment, regulate every act and thought accordingly. But to go away from among men, if there are gods, is not a thing to be afraid of, for the gods will not involve thee in evil. But if indeed they do not exist, or if they have no concern about human affairs, what is it to me to live in a universe devoid of gods or devoid of providence? But gods there are, undoubtedly, and they regard human affairs, and have put it wholly in our power, that we should not fall into what is truly evil. Indeed, it's from the second chapter of the Meditations. Marcus Aurelius was a Stoic, and Stoics were unabashedly theists, or at the least, what we might call deists. He certainly believed in, at minimum, divine providence, very important to Stoics, and likely regarded the standard Greco-Roman pantheon with respect and belief. Parents were religious, school was pretty religious, community was definitely religious. I was religious for probably my first 23 to 24 years of my life. I became non-religious because I first realized I was wasting my time with a bunch of hypocrites. Granted, I knew and understood that everyone was a sinner, but the leaders of the church that I directly worked with, middle people, would go out and date a bunch of people, fuck them, divorce their wives, and their lives were messed up, and they never seemed to correct that behavior. They also spoke in tongues and led Bible studies. Their lives were more fucked up than mine, and the grace of God never seemed to help change anything. That was the initial push which made me raise my eyebrows. I started reading a bunch more and getting more interested in science, philosophy. I did some internal debating and reading, from C.S. Lewis on one side to Dawkins and Hitchens. Needless to say, I agreed more with Dawkins and Hitchens from an intellectual perspective. I quit going to church and learned I really enjoyed sleeping in and having 3-4 hours available before kickoff. When I was in middle school and high school, I always found other religions fascinating. I was raised Christian, but my parents weren't super religious and we never went to church. In the time that I was learning about religions, I kept wondering why any of it made sense. I'm more of a math science guy and I like to make sure things are proven. If it isn't a theory backed up with trustworthy data, then I question why anyone could think it. You can't prove God. People can swear up and down that they can feel His guiding hand, but nobody can have any concrete proof of it. That's why you need faith. After questioning why it's a thing, I took world history and that opened my eyes even further. There are so many religions, even some that are dead now, but they all have something in common. Zoroastrianism is an ancient Persian religion that is very close to Christianity, but was created centuries beforehand. It seems like everything stems from something or another, and most God stories were created by storytellers to explain how the world worked. Religion was created to keep us from being afraid of the unknown. The hope it brings keeps people from worrying about things like death and disease because they have a guardian protecting them if they are holy. I am not an atheist, but neither am I religious. I will forever be a skeptic until the day I die and can see whether there is life after death or if I just disappear into the void. Only time will tell. I wasn't raised in a family that was religious. My parents gave my sister and I the option if we wanted to, and we did go to a few churches with friends for the experience. Ultimately, we decided not to be though. I chose not to be, not because of my lack of faith in God. I simply didn't feel that the church was something that was required for any faith I chose to have. My current views are not to have 100% faith in any known religion we have. I don't feel that only one religion is 100% right and all the rest are wrong. I believe there is a higher being than ourselves, but that could be God, aliens, who knows? I believe in being as good a person as I can be and in not judging others for their own views. I don't believe in the ideas of heaven or hell, but I do believe that after death we evolve into something greater than we are now. I'm satisfied with this. 3. I had an interesting conversation with a minister a while back. She said, I don't believe in a physical heaven and hell, but that you can make someone's life a heaven or hell. That seemed like such a better way to phrase it than the literal, physical representation of heaven or hell. It does sound more logical, but it's not just the physical view of heaven or hell that I have issues with. It's the requirements to reach them that bother me. I can get someone who rapes, murders, etc., going to a place like hell, but some of the other acts that seem to be treated or viewed as sins are a bit extreme. Going to church, for one, should not determine where you go. This may not be a sin to God, but I live in the Bible Belt and a lot of churchgoers judge you simply by the fact that you don't attend. Also, the basic sins are all based on emotions that God Himself instilled in us, and despite what a person may do to keep themselves sin-free, does the effort really matter? All you have to do is go to church and ask for forgiveness every week. I just can't believe that a God who loves its children then say, if you don't do this and this and this and acknowledge me this often and do this, then I'm sending you to a place where your soul will be tortured for all of eternity. I've always had the sense that a person could be a genuinely good person at heart and still wind up in hell because they didn't quite understand the rules, while more corrupt people who go to church and preach God's word and ask for forgiveness for the same sins over and over believe they will go to heaven. To me, it sounds like you'd be playing a game that either can't be won or your opponents are cheating throughout the game being played. Because the foundations of religion seem logically inconsistent to me, or at least more logically inconsistent than other options. I feel like this is many people's opinions, at least in the Western world. There's such an emphasis on proof and science that it's hard for younger people to grasp such as abstract concept and expect people to just believe all this ridiculous, unrealistic stuff without any backing. I am religious because it makes me happy. Simple as that. It comforts me to think that someone, somewhere, is watching out for me. Yeah, you don't need religion for that, but it helps me through tough times. It really is that simple. Edit. Some people called me out on me using the word no. You are right, it was the wrong word. I don't know it, it isn't a fact. I'll replace it. Sorry about that. It was early in the morning, and I'm not very eloquent in the early hours. I was born and raised strictly Catholic, struggled with doubt in high school, and resolved those doubts throughout college and professional life. Here's the best I can explain all of it. Not trying to evangelize here, just explaining and defending my faith. But no one has been able to touch the Gospels. They are beautiful in their message. To me, it is utter perfection. Love each other. Care for the poor. Be merciful. Don't be quick to anger. Accept that we all F up, we are all sinners. But that to forgive is to be forgiven. You see the sheer power in that message through Pope Francis, who has eschewed the pomp and formality of Catholic hierarchy. Instead, he lives as close to Jesus' teachings as possible. It never fails to just blow me away. Just how powerful this message is. Compare it to, say, Commentari di Bello Gallico, Caesar's conquest of France. Arguably the most important historical epoch for the Roman Empire, sans the transition from the Regnum Roman to democracy to emperor, and it happened within 50 years of Christ's life. You had essentially one source, Caesar himself, who documented the campaign. So take the historical account of mighty Caesar's conquest and put it up against this humble carpenter's kid in the backwater of the Roman Empire. His life and works bore the most elegant historical documentation in history to that point. Just amazing. There have been 3 times in my life where I have hit a critical junction. I won't go into too many details. In each of those cases, I prayed with a deep intensity. In each case, I felt my spiritual consciousness alter. 2 times it was slight. 1 time it was quite dramatic. Years back, I had someone very close to me contemplating suicide. I was on my hands and knees in prayer. I was praying about what to do. Fly out back east to be with that person? Call the police? The anxiety was suffocating. In the midst of the prayer, one of the most profound experiences of my life came a comfort so rapid and so consuming. I intuitively felt a sort of divine presence. No, presence overstates it. A whiff of divinity, if that makes any sense. Some of old ecclesiastical scholars will talk of being touched by God. I had no idea what that meant until that moment. All the angst and anxiety and fear and concern for my friend just vanished. I felt a warm sense of hope and optimism. This person would be just fine. And he was. I still get goosebumps thinking about the experience. Final, you don't need Christianity to live a good life. You don't need it to be a good person. That's garbage. But if you judge this faith based on the message the four Gospels, there is an elegance so profound it's divine.